Today I'm going to walk you through installing Tyk Pro on-premise. And what that is all the Tyk components plus the dependencies. On your screen you see the gateway, the portal, the dashboard, and the pump. Those are the Tyk components. And then MongoDB and Redis are the dependencies, which are open source. And we're going to deploy all of them today. So to do that, we're going to use a walkthrough that's based off of the Tyk Pro Docker demo. This is a repository that's open for anyone to use. The only prerequisite is a license, which you should get from our website, Tyk.io, or from an account manager. Okay, so Tyk Pro Docker demo, it's available on our repository. Feel free to take a look. So I'm going to be deploying this on AWS on EC2. Feel free to use any cloud provider, any VM, even your local laptop for the same instructions. They'll vary a little bit slightly. So let's go get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to launch an EC2 instance, which is essentially just a VM. Okay. Typically for Tyk in production, we'd use CPU intensive VMs, but seeing as this is just a quick POC, I'll just pick a 2-core machine here. Okay, just going to give it a public IP address. And then lastly, for security groups, you just want to give it access to port 8080 for the gateway, port 3000 for the dashboard, and then port 22 so we can SSH into the VMs. Okay, launch. Now we just have to choose a key pair, choose sed key, and acknowledge and launch. So now our VM is booting up here. You can see while it's booting up, here's our public IP. So I'll copy that. And now we have to do SSH command -i flag to hash my key. And then EC2 user at the public IP. 18.209.108.70. Okay. Connection refused. It might still be booting up. There it is. Okay. Are you sure? Yes. And now we're logged into our VM. So following this documentation, and by the way, the doc is available on our docs under Getting Started, Installation with Tyk on-premise, AWS Marketplace, and Install Tyk on AWS EC2. So first step here is we have to install our prerequisites, which is Git, Docker, and Docker Compose. We need Git to install the Tyk Pro Docker demo repository, and then we need Docker and Docker Compose to run the Docker Compose file. And that's going to boot up all the 5 components that we just looked at earlier. Okay, and while that downloads, we'll give it a second. We'll come back when the prerequisites are fully installed. Finished. Now we're on step 4. Now we can clone the repository and go into that branch there. And there we are. ls, you can see that it's actually installed the repo and we have all the files we need. Next step, we have to add the license key. So of course this is a fake license key. You'll need a real one now. So we're going to go to const tyk analytics. We're going to put our license key into the dashboard configuration file. So we're going to find the license key variable, and in here we're going to paste our key. So I'm going to take away the screen here, paste the key, save the document, and then we'll bring you back. Okay, welcome back. I have pasted the key in the configuration file, and the next step is we're going to use Docker Compose to run the whole stack. So I'll do a Docker Compose up. And while that's installing, I'll pull up the Docker Compose file and we can show you what it looks like. So in our Compose, we have 5 services. We have the dashboard, we have the gateway, we have the pump, we have Redis, and we have Mongo. The only ports we really care about are the ones mentioned earlier. We're going to log on to the dashboard on port 3000 and the gateway via port 8080. Now we can see that everything's running. and boot it up just fine. Okay, so now we can visit our dashboard at the public IP on port 3000. So let's go back to our virtual machine and grab the public IP. And now I'm going to visit that public IP on port 3000, and there we are. Now we can bootstrap our install. Before I do this, I'm going to activate SSL. I want my dashboard and my gateway to both have SSL turned on. So let's keep going with the setup instructions to do that. So number one, we have to tweak the configuration files for both the gateway and the dashboard. So I'll go ahead and I'll Control C to stop those. And what we actually want to do, what we could have done the first time, no big deal, is to duck compose up with the flag -d, and that's going to run all our containers in the background. Okay. So now those are running. We can do follow step one via const, the tyk conf. So here's our gateway configuration file. And for our policy connection string, we want to change this to HTTPS. Our DB connection string, we're going to change this to HTTPS as well. And then we're going to find HTTP server options. We're going to set use SSL to true. And then finally, we're just going to paste this little blurb in here for certificates. Okay, and that's it. Now we can save and quit. I have to do a similar thing here for Tyk Analytics. We're going to change the Tyk Gateway host here. We're going to make that HTTPS. And then we're going to find HTTP server options. And we're going to set this to true. And again, we'll paste our certificates bit in here. And that should do it. So it looks like I did miss a step on the configuration file. We have to add a flag here, SSL and secure skip verify. We have to set that to true. And that's because we're going to be using self-signed certificates. Just paste that in. Okay. So that's it. So now we've enabled SSL and we've told both the dashboard and the gateway where to find those certificates. So the next step is to generate those self-signed certificates and then mount them into the containers. So let's use this command to generate some self-signed certs. Now I can just put basically anything here. Of course, if these weren't self-signed certificates, everything would have to be valid. But for now, we can just put anything. So now we're done. If I do an ls, you can see we have our cert.pem and our key.pem that have been generated for us. Now we have to mount them. So we check our Docker compose file, and here under volumes, we have to mount the cert and the key, the public and private key, in other words. And then we'll do the same for the gateway here. Mount the public and private key. Make sure our spacing is accurate, otherwise it won't work. That's it. And now we just have to recreate the containers using up-d. And instead of just leaving it like this and hitting enter, I want to tell it which services to restart so it doesn't have to recreate all of them. Okay, Docker compose up, dashboard, and the gateway. Now you can see it's just recreating those two. And now we're going to bootstrap our install using the command line. It's a little bit different with SSL. So I'll paste that in. It's now, we've downloaded the bootstrap script to our VM. We have to apply the right permissions. And now we can run the bootstrap script. You can see that we've generated all the right credentials and created an organization. So now we're ready to log on to our dashboard. So if we go back to our dashboard and we refresh, Our first problem is we can see client sent HTTP request. That's because now we've activated SSL, so we have to put the right protocol there. And of course, we get a warning from our browser because we're using those self-signed certs, so I'm just going to go ahead and ignore it. And there we go. Now we no longer see the bootstrap menu, and that's because we already have an organization. So we can use our generated credentials and log in. And that's it. Now we've logged in. So let's go ahead and test our API through the gateway. Under APIs, add a new API, and we'll just call this test. And save. Okay, and of course, if we go back in here, we can see that we do have a listen path, which is test on the gateway. So now, if we grab our public instance VM again, let's just open up a new terminal here. So now I'm going to do a curl, and there's the IP of my VM. And instead of port 3000, we're going to use port 8080 to access our gateway, and we're going to hit the test listen path. We get the same error, of course. We have to specify the protocol. It was HTTPS. And now we get a different error. We get a self-signed certificate error. So we have to specifically tell our curl command to ignore that with -K. And now we're getting through. Now our gateway is receiving the request and applying the correct authorization permits. In step 2, I'll show you how to add a client certificate using mutual TLS flow in Tyk. Thanks for watching.